Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to meet someone off a dating app. If you had asked me 2 years earlier, I probably would have laughed and said I wasn't desperate enough. But in September of 2022, I was living in a small Minnesota town called Pine Grove, where almost nothing ever happened, and everyone already knew everyone. I was 16 then, a high school junior, restless, and tired of seeing the same faces every day in the hallways. My parents were strict, but not in a bad way. More in the "we just worry about you" kind of way. My mom worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and my dad was a contractor who often left before dawn for jobs outside town. They trusted me, mostly because I had never given them a reason not to. My grades were decent, I worked weekends at a coffee shop, and I didn't party much. But when summer ended and school picked back up, I started feeling invisible. Most of my friends had boyfriends, or at least someone they texted at night. I wanted that too. And that's how I ended up downloading an app called True Match. At first, I only matched with guys from other towns. Some were weird, some were pushy, and some just wanted one thing. But then I matched with a boy named Tyler Reeves. Tyler was 17, lived one town over in Milford, and claimed to be taking classes at the local community college after leaving high school early. His profile wasn't anything flashy, just a few photos of him sitting on a porch with a dog, leaning against a car, and one mirror selfie in a hoodie. He looked average, normal, maybe a little shy, but something about his messages felt different. The first thing he said to me wasn't, "Hey," or "You're cute." He wrote, "Tyler, you look like someone who listens before they speak. That's rare, am I right?" I laughed when I read it, because it was so oddly specific. Me. Maybe. Or maybe I just don't like wasting words, Tyler. Then I already like you. Most girls just ghost or send emojis. We started talking more after that. He told me he used to attend Pine Grove High, my school, but had transferred after drama with teachers. He said he got in trouble for borrowing essays online, which sounded like plagiarism, but he played it off as if it were a harmless mistake. Something about that explanation didn't sit right with me. Schools don't usually expel people for plagiarism. But I let it go. He was nice, and he offered to pick me up after my shifts at the cafe sometimes because I didn't have a license yet. At first, it felt like having an older brother. He would joke around, buy me milkshakes, and once even brought me home when it was pouring rain. But the way he looked at me sometimes, it was obvious he wanted more. By late September, the air had started to cool, and the leaves in Pine Grove had turned bright orange and red. A girl from school named Brianna threw a big house party while her parents were away. Everyone went, even the quiet kids. I almost didn't, but Tyler offered to drive me. When he pulled up in front of my house that night, he smiled and said, "You look amazing." I had just thrown on jeans and a jacket. "It's nothing fancy," I shrugged. "Trust me," he said. "You don't need fancy." The party was loud, crowded, and honestly overwhelming. I spent most of the night in the kitchen with a few friends, while Tyler lingered nearby. He didn't drink, which I thought was responsible, but I noticed he was always watching me. Like every time I glanced around the room, his eyes were already on me. When things started winding down, I asked if he could give me a ride home. He agreed right away. The drive back was quiet at first. Then, as he pulled into my driveway, he gripped the wheel a little tighter and said, "Hey, listen. I think you and I should go out sometime." My heart dropped. I'd been expecting this. "I'm sorry, Tyler," I said gently. "I just don't feel that way. I like hanging out with you, but only as friends." His jaw tensed. "Friends, huh? After everything I've done for you? All those rides, all that time? I never asked for—" I stopped myself. "I offered you gas money, remember? You insisted he gave me this look, half hurt, half angry. Then he forced a smile and said, "Right. No worries." Friends, I thanked him and went inside, feeling guilty, but also relieved. That night I changed into pajamas, brushed my teeth, and got into bed. My phone buzzed just as I was about to close my eyes. It was a message from a girl I barely knew, someone who had also been at the party. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a long paragraph about how Tyler had been bragging, how he showed people photos on his phone, photos of me, sleeping, in my own bed. I froze. Then more images started coming in, screenshots of what he had shown them, me lying in bed unaware, taken through my window. My chest tightened so badly I thought I might faint. I looked at my window. It was still unlocked. My blinds had been open earlier that day. He could have been standing outside my room watching me whenever he wanted. Hands shaking, I texted him in all caps, "Me. Never contact me again." Almost immediately he replied, "Tyler, wait, you don't understand. I wasn't trying to scare you. I just wanted to keep you safe. Watching you sleep, it felt peaceful." I stared at the screen in horror. Me. Lose my number. "Don't ever speak to me again." I blocked him right after sending it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I don't know how long I was asleep when the sound of glass shattering jolted me awake. My eyes flew open, and I saw a dark figure stepping through my broken window. Are you kidding me?" I gasped, stumbling out of bed. The figure moved quickly, trying to cut me off. But his foot slipped on the shards of glass, and he fell forward. That's when I saw the glint of a knife in his hand. "Tyler," I whispered. My throat felt like it was closing. He scrambled to his feet, rage twisting his face. "You weren't supposed to find out like this. We were supposed to be together." I screamed, sprinting for the hallway. He lunged, but the slip had slowed him down. My dad burst out of his room, eyes wide. "What the hell's going on?" "It's him," I screamed. "It's Tyler. He's in my room. He's got a knife." Dad charged into my room, but by the time he flicked on the light, Tyler was gone. The police came within 10 minutes. Paramedics too, because in my rush I hadn't realized my bare feet were cut open from the glass. I was bleeding badly, dizzy, barely able to explain. At the hospital I learned that Tyler had disappeared into the night, but a week later they found him hiding at his uncle's cabin. In court he said, "I don't know why I did it. I loved her." The prosecutor showed the jury all the photos, all the evidence, the knife, the broken window, the way he had talked about me at the party. He was convicted of breaking and entering, stalking, and attempted first-degree murder. But later, on appeal, the murder charge was reduced. They claimed his mental health issues and clean record made him less dangerous than he seemed. He still got 16 years. It's been 3 years. I've moved away from Pine Grove. I don't go on dating apps anymore. I barely even trust new people. Sometimes when I'm lying in bed, I still feel the sensation of being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck rise, and I think of that night, how close he came, how easily it could have gone differently. I know he's behind bars, but part of me will always live in that moment, frozen by the sound of breaking glass. And sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't rejected him that night, would he have done it anyway? All I know is, I survived. I never thought I'd be the type of person to try online dating. For most of my life, I didn't need it. I'd been married young, right after college, to a woman I thought I'd spend forever with. Her name was Rachel, and she was everything to me, my partner, my compass, my best friend. We had built a quiet little life together in a small town outside of Springfield, Missouri. I worked for a local logistics company, and she taught elementary school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. That was until the night everything was ripped away from me. Rachel was killed by a drunk driver in the fall of 2005. She was on her way home from grading papers at a coffee shop when a man twice her size and 3 times her blood alcohol limit swerved into her lane. She died instantly. I got the call at 11:48 p.m. I remember that exact time because my phone lit up on the nightstand, and I answered in a groggy daze, not realizing that my entire world was about to collapse. The years that followed were dark. I didn't just lose a wife, I lost myself. I withdrew, spent nights in silence staring at the ceiling, and let friendships fade. My house became a tomb filled with memories I couldn't escape. People told me to move on, but those words meant nothing when every corner of my home smelled like her shampoo, or when her voice still played in my head when I passed her favorite bookstore. For a long time I swore off dating altogether, but grief does something strange to you. It dulls, but it never really disappears. After 7 years of isolation, I realized I couldn't spend the rest of my life completely alone. My friends had families, my coworkers had kids, and I had an empty house that echoed every time I opened the door. That's when I decided, against my better judgment, to try online dating. Back then, this was the early 2000s. Online dating was still awkward, still something people whispered about. Match.com seemed like the safest option. I sat at my computer one evening, hands shaking like I was committing a crime, and made a profile. I kept it honest. My name was Daniel, 41 years old, widowed, no kids, never remarried. I put up a few pictures where I looked presentable. One from a barbecue with my cousins, one from a fishing trip, and a formal one from a company dinner. Nothing special, just enough to prove I wasn't a creep. It didn't take long before someone reached out. Her name was Samantha. She said she was 38, lived in a nearby town called Fairview, and worked in retail. Her profile was simple: book lover, dog owner, coffee addict. Her photo showed a brunette woman with kind eyes and a smile that wasn't perfect but seemed genuine. At first it felt refreshing just to talk to someone. Our chats were lighthearted. She asked about my favorite movies, my work, and eventually about Rachel. I was hesitant to share, but when I did, Samantha responded with compassion. She told me she'd had heartbreak too, an engagement that had ended badly. That shared vulnerability made me trust her. Weeks passed, and our conversations grew longer. I started to look forward to her messages, even catching myself smiling at my phone. It felt foreign, almost guilty, but alive. One night I typed nervously, "Would you like to meet in person? Maybe grab a drink at Johnson's Tavern? It's a nice, quiet spot." Her reply came fast. "I'd love that, Daniel. I think it's time we met." My heart skipped. It had been almost a decade since I'd been on a date, and suddenly I was 22 again, panicking about what to wear. The next evening, I shaved, ironed my shirt, cleaned out my car, and tried not to overthink. Johnson's Tavern was only 5 minutes away, a rustic, wood-paneled bar where locals gathered after long shifts. It wasn't fancy, but it was familiar, and that comfort mattered. When I walked in, the air was filled with laughter, pool balls cracking against each other, and the smell of fried food. I chose a table near the back, ordered a soda to calm my nerves, and texted Samantha. "Hey, I'm here." "Just grabbed a table," she replied. "Running late, caught in some traffic." "Be there in 10, I exhaled, trying to relax. That's when Gabrielle, the bartender, walked over. "Damn, Mr. Daniels," she teased, grinning. "You're dressed sharp tonight." "Big date or something," I chuckled nervously. "Something like that, Gabby." She was only 19, home from college, daughter of the owner, and known around town for her curiosity. If you wanted to know gossip, you asked Gabby. She could dig up details about anyone. "Let me see," she said, raising her eyebrows. "Got a picture?" I hesitated, then handed her my phone. She looked at the photo of Samantha, and for a brief second, her expression shifted. Her smile faltered, her eyes narrowed, and she let out a quiet, "Huh." "What?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Nothing," she said quickly, forcing a grin. "She's pretty. You're lucky." Then she walked away, which was odd because Gabby never just walked away. I tried to shake it off, but something about her reaction gnawed at me. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Almost there. Just a couple more minutes. That's when I noticed Gabby whispering with two older men at the bar, both truckers I'd seen around. They glanced in my direction, then back at her, their faces tight with concern. The room's energy shifted, subtle but noticeable. People avoided eye contact with me, their voices quieter than before. Gabby returned, setting my drink down carefully. "Can I see that picture again?" she asked softly. "Sure," I said, unlocking my phone. She stared at it longer this time, then lowered her voice. "Daniel. That's not Samantha. That's a man. His real name is Charles. He got out of prison 6 months ago." The words slammed into me. "What are you talking about?" She swallowed. "He's known around here. He dresses up as women online to lure people. Lonely men, usually. He's been caught breaking into houses, stealing valuables, even stalking some of his dates. He was charged with multiple counts of fraud and burglary, but got a cushy deal because of his family's connections." I blinked, unable to process. My first instinct was denial. "No, that can't—" "Daniel!" She cut me off, her tone urgent. "I called the police. They're on their way, but you need to act normal until they get here." Normal? My blood was boiling. I'd opened up to this person. I'd told him about Rachel. And he was a predator? Before I could reply, my phone buzzed again. "Parking now." "See you in a sec." Gabby leaned closer. "One of the truckers will watch your back if anything happens. Just keep calm." The bar door creaked open, and there she was. The person I knew as Samantha stepped inside wearing the same smile from the profile picture. For a moment, the bar went dead silent. Every eye was on us. I forced a half-hearted wave, fighting to keep my rage buried. My fists clenched under the table. Gabby, calm and polite, approached Samantha. "Evening. Need a table?" "Oh no," Samantha said in a high-pitched voice. "I see my date already." Right then, 2 county sheriff cruisers pulled up outside, lights flashing against the tavern's wooden walls. Samantha's eyes widened. He spun, bolting for the door. He didn't make it. One of the deputies slammed him to the ground before he reached the gravel lot. He thrashed, shouting in that fake feminine voice, "This is a mistake. I'm a woman. I'm a woman." But the deputies weren't buying it. They cuffed him, read his rights, and shoved him into the back of the cruiser. I sat frozen, fury and humiliation twisting inside me. I wasn't relieved. I wasn't proud. I just felt violated. Gabby touched my arm gently. "You okay?" I shook my head. "No, not even close." That night I drove home in silence, the glow of my dashboard lights blurring through tears. Rachel's picture sat on my dresser when I walked in, and I stared at it for what felt like hours. I had wanted companionship, love, or at least connection. What I found instead was a reminder that even in small towns, even in quiet lives, monsters hide behind screens waiting for the vulnerable. From that day forward, I swore I would never use a dating app again. I'd rather live with loneliness than risk inviting that kind of evil into my life a second time. I never thought I'd find myself staring at the glow of a dating app at 2 a.m., thumb swiping back and forth like it was a nervous tick. I'm 40, work in tech, and live alone in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Fairfield, Ohio. My days were predictable: code reviews, meetings that could have been emails, frozen meals, and a late-night scroll through Reddit until my eyes burned. I wasn't the kind of guy who turned heads at parties. I wasn't even the kind who got invited to parties anymore. The breakup that shoved me into this spiral wasn't dramatic, at least not in the Hollywood sense. Elena, the woman I'd lived with for 5 years, sat me down one evening after dinner. She had that calm, rehearsed tone people use when they've practiced what they're about to say in front of a mirror. "Mark," she began softly, "I can't keep doing this. I feel like we're roommates who split bills, not partners who share a life. I stared at my half-empty plate of pasta, unable to look at her. So that's it? She sighed. I've been patient, but you don't really let me in. I want more than this quiet half-love. I deserve it. There wasn't yelling or slammed doors, just silence. She moved her things out over the next few weeks, and suddenly I was left with too much space, too much quiet, and a bed that felt like a stage where half the cast was missing. Loneliness is strange. It doesn't hit you like a punch. It seeps in slowly in the pauses between Netflix episodes, in the empty chair across from you at breakfast, in the way you stop buying 2 toothbrushes and realize one will last you months. That's when I downloaded Tinder. I told myself it was just for distraction, not to find love, not to rebound, just to have someone to talk to who wasn't my cat or the grocery store cashier. At first, it was mechanical. Swipe left, swipe right, send a polite hey that usually fizzled out. And then I matched with Clara. She was 35, with auburn hair that fell just below her shoulders, freckles on her cheeks, and a smile that looked alive, not posed. Her bio mentioned that she loved old jazz records, collected antique clocks, and spent most of her time caring for her grandfather, who'd been paralyzed in a farm accident years ago. Our first chat started simple. Clara. Okay, important question. If you could only eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be? Me. Easy. Pasta. It's cheap, filling, and hard to mess up. You? Clara. Stew. My grandpa swears by it, says it's the only real food left in this world. Maybe I'll make it for you sometime. Me. I'd like that. I don't think anyone's ever made me stew before. Clara. Then you're long overdue. She was funny, responsive, and genuinely seemed curious about me, something rare in the endless scroll of half-hearted app conversations. She asked about my job, even though I warned her tech talk was boring. She asked about my cat, and when I sent a picture of Juniper tangled in a paper bag, she replied, "That cat looks smarter than most people I know." We went on 2 casual dates. The first was coffee at a small shop near downtown. She wore a green coat with a button missing, and she laughed with her whole face. The second was a walk by the river. She told me about growing up in the countryside, how her mother passed away young, and how her grandfather basically raised her. By the 3rd week, she invited me to her place. "Come out Saturday," she said over the phone. Her voice was soft but carried a kind of excitement. "I'll cook. You've been eating frozen dinners, haven't you?" I chuckled nervously. Guilty. Then it settled. "You'll have real food for once, just be okay with it being at my house. I don't like leaving Grandpa alone at night." There was a small pause. Something about the speed of it felt quick, but I was craving connection, warmth, anything human. I told myself it was fine. People moved fast sometimes. Her farmhouse was 20 minutes outside town, tucked into the woods off a narrow road that barely fit 2 cars. By the time I pulled into the gravel driveway, dusk was settling in, painting the trees in long shadows. The house itself was old but charming, with peeling white paint and a porch swing that creaked in the breeze. A faint glow came from the kitchen window. Clara opened the door before I could knock. She kissed me lightly on the cheek and smiled. "You made it. Come in, come in." The interior smelled of herbs and raw meat. The living room was cluttered with antiques, faded portraits, clocks that ticked out of sync, and heavy curtains that seemed to drink in the little bit of light left. In the kitchen, I froze. On the counter sat several large chunks of raw meat. Not wrapped, not refrigerated. Just sitting there, dripping onto the wooden surface. I tried to sound casual. Shouldn't that be in the fridge?" She shook her head with a dismissive wave. "Doctor's orders. Grandpa's on a special diet, full meat. It's the only thing his body accepts now." "Oh," I muttered, forcing a smile. "Right." The stew simmering on the stove gave off a thick, almost metallic smell. She stirred it slowly, humming to herself. As night came, the house grew unsettlingly quiet. We sat in the living room, chatting about movies, but my eyes kept drifting to the dark hallway. At the end of it was her grandfather's door. She told me earlier that he was paralyzed, unable to speak, and hadn't left his bed in years. But I never heard a sound from that room. No creaks, no coughs, nothing. Around 11, Clara excused herself. I need to change Grandpa into his night clothes and give him his medicine. I'll be right back. When she left, I sat there in the heavy silence, my nerves buzzing. Out of boredom, or maybe curiosity, I stood and wandered. That's when I noticed a door near the kitchen leading down to the basement. The smell hit me the moment I cracked it open. A foul, rotting stench that curled my stomach. I covered my mouth and pulled out my phone flashlight. The wooden stairs groaned under me as I descended. My knees trembled. And then I saw them. Jars. Dozens of them. Glass jars filled with murky fluid, and inside what looked unmistakably like human remains, fingers, eyeballs, strips of flesh floating like grotesque specimens, crates stacked with bones, some still slick with dried blood, and hanging from rusted hooks along the beams, torsos. Split open, ribs exposed, organs missing. One still wore a wedding ring. I doubled over and vomited right there on the stairs. Footsteps creaked above. A door closed. Panic surged. I scrambled back up, slammed the basement door shut, and stumbled into the living room just as Clara walked back in, smiling gently. "Everything okay?" she asked. I forced a grin, my throat raw. "Yeah, just stretched my legs." Her eyes lingered on me a moment too long, as if weighing something. Then she smiled again. "You look tired. Want me to set up the guest room?" My mind screamed. I nodded. "Yeah, that'd be great." She led me down the hall. We passed her grandfather's room. The door was cracked open. Inside, I glimpsed the silhouette of a bed with a curtain around it, like a hospital divider. On the floor, I noticed plates stacked high, buzzing with flies. I swallowed hard. The guest room was across the hall. She left me there with a smile. "I'll grab blankets. Make yourself comfortable." As soon as she disappeared, I slipped into the grandfather's room. The air was rancid, thick with rot. I used my phone light on low. He was lying in the bed, face hidden behind the curtain. His chest rose and fell in slow, ragged breaths. I turned to the small window on the far wall. Old, stiff, but just large enough to climb through. I slid it open inch by inch, then I froze. A sound. Slow, raspy breathing, right behind the curtain. I turned. The head snapped toward me with unnatural speed. Eyes wide, milky and lifeless, but staring. And then, the mouth twisted into a grotesque grin, teeth jagged and too long, like they'd grown past what a human mouth could hold. My blood turned to ice. I bolted, scrambling through the window, tearing my arm on the jagged frame. I hit the ground hard, but I didn't stop. I ran through the woods, branches slicing my face until I stumbled onto the main road. A truck driver pulled over when he saw me bleeding and gasping. At the gas station, I called the police. They went to the farmhouse that night. Here's the part that keeps me up at night. When they arrived, the house was empty. No Clara, no grandfather, no jars in the basement. The property records showed the house had been abandoned for nearly 20 years. The last owner? Raymond Fletcher, a butcher who'd been paralyzed in a farm accident in the late 90s. He died in 2002. There was no record of Clara anywhere. No license, no social, no birth certificate. Nothing. I stopped using dating apps. But sometimes, in my dreams, I'm back in that room. The curtain pulls back, and those dead eyes open wide as the grin stretches across his face, teeth sharp and endless. And every time I wake up with the smell of raw meat still in my nose. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would actually end up on a dating app. I used to laugh when people said they met online. It sounded so desperate to me back in high school, like admitting you couldn't meet someone in the real world. But 2 years into college, I wasn't laughing anymore. I was 20 years old, buried in civil engineering at Lakewood University, and if I'm being honest, my life was exhausting. I had friends, sure, guys I studied with, people to grab pizza with on weekends. But when it came to dating, it was like there was this whole other world happening around me that I just couldn't touch. Every time I opened Instagram, I'd see people I knew posting pictures with their girlfriends. Trips to the city, late-night diner runs, even just selfies of them studying together. Meanwhile, I was always alone. Always walking back from the library at 2 in the morning, headphones in, pretending the silence didn't bother me. It did. That loneliness built up quietly, and it wasn't until one Friday night that it finally tipped over. I'd been invited to hang out in a friend's suite, something low-key, just movies and food. When I got there, though, I noticed one of the guys sitting way too close to a girl I didn't know. They weren't even official yet, but you could feel the spark between them. The way they leaned toward each other, whispered jokes, laughed like no one else existed. I went back to my dorm that night and just sat there in the dark. My laptop fan hummed, the mini fridge buzzed, and for the first time in a while, I admitted to myself that I was tired of being alone. That was the night I downloaded Plenty of Fish. Making a profile was awkward. What do you even write about yourself without sounding like a complete idiot? I threw together a bio about liking horror movies, video games, hiking when I wasn't drowning in coursework, and coffee. Always coffee. Then I uploaded a few pictures, one at the gym, one from a trip back home, and one of me and my dog. I hesitated before hitting publish, but loneliness makes you do things you'd usually overthink. The first week was brutal. A couple of matches trickled in, but most never replied. The few who did sent robotic answers that made me wonder if they were even real people. Every night I'd open the app, scroll, and feel my confidence sink lower. I almost deleted it. Then, one night while I was cramming for a midterm, my phone buzzed. New message from Allison. Her profile picture showed her with long brown hair, dark eyes, and a faint smile like she didn't love taking pictures but tried anyway. Her bio was short and simple. Introvert, gamer, sarcastic but nice, looking for someone who gets me. Her message read, Allison, so, you're actually kinda cute. Didn't expect that on here. My stomach flipped. I typed back immediately. Me. I'll take that as a compliment, I think. Allison. It is. Most guys on here are super creepy. You look normal. That's rare. Me. Trust me, I was worried about the same thing with girls on here. Allison. A lol fair. So what's your deal? You look like a busy guy. For the next 2 hours we talked. About professors we both hated, about games we played, about how cafeteria food should legally be classified as cruel and unusual punishment. She was funny, sharp, and most importantly, she seemed real. For the first time since downloading the app, it felt like maybe, just maybe, this could go somewhere. Over the next few days, Allison and I messaged constantly. She told me she lived off campus in a small apartment, that she was 19, a freshman majoring in English. We joked about how different our lives were. Her drowning in essays, me stuck with equations. Sometimes I'd be studying when my phone buzzed, and her name would pop up with something like, Allison, stop working and talk to me. I'm bored. If I fail this midterm, I'm blaming you. Allison, worth it. It felt easy, natural. Then about a week into talking, things shifted. One night she started being flirty, more than before. It started with jokes about how I looked good in my gym photo. Then she asked if I wanted to play truth or dare over text. It was silly at first. Truth. What's your worst class? Dare. Send me a picture of your messy desk. But slowly, it turned more intimate. I wish I could say I had the self-control to stop it there. But I was 20. Lonely. Flattered by the attention. When she dared me to take off my shirt and send a picture, I laughed nervously but did it. She sent one back of her in just a tank top. That night the game escalated. Piece by piece until I crossed a line I swore I'd never cross. I sent her a nude. She sent something back too, though now, thinking about it, I can't even be sure it was really her. At the time, though, I went to bed giddy. For once in my life, someone wanted me. The next day, everything changed. Allison didn't text me that morning, or that afternoon. By evening, I started to worry. She had never taken more than a few hours to reply before. I told myself maybe she was busy with homework, or out with friends. But when I checked my phone obsessively all night and still saw nothing, a knot of dread grew in my stomach. The next day, while I was sitting at my desk reviewing notes, my phone rang. It was her. She had never called me before. I answered quickly. "Hey, Allison?" Silence. Then, a voice. But not hers. A deep man's voice. Cold. Angry. "What the hell are pictures of you doing on my 15-year-old daughter's phone?" My heart stopped. "What? Who is this?" I stammered. "You heard me," the voice growled. "You've been sending nudes to a child. Do you know how serious this is? Do you know what kind of sick freak that makes you?" Blood roared in my ears. My vision tunneled. I didn't know," I said quickly. "Her profile said she was 19. She told me she went to my university. I swear, I didn't know." "You're a liar," he snapped, "and now you're going to pay for what you've done. Unless you want the police at your door in the next hour, you're going to send me $11,000 to make this go away." I felt like I couldn't breathe. The man's voice on the other end was calm but vicious. "You've ruined your life, son. Sending sexual photos to a minor. You know what that makes you? A pedophile. The cops don't play games with people like you. I should be calling them right now." My throat was dry. My palms were slick with sweat. "I swear to God I didn't know," I said, my voice cracking. "She told me she was 19. Her profile said she was in college. Please, you have to believe me." There was a pause. I could hear faint breathing, heavy and deliberate. Then, "You think the police care about your excuses? You think a judge is going to pat you on the head and say, 'Oh, it's fine, he didn't know'? No. You'll be branded for life. Prison. Registering as a sex offender. Goodbye to your future." My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. "Please," I whispered. "Please don't do this to me." "I didn't know." Another pause. Then his tone shifted, less rage, more calculated. "Maybe there's another way. Maybe I don't need to involve the police. Maybe I can keep this between us." "What do you mean?" I asked. "You're going to compensate me for the trauma you've caused my daughter," he said coldly. $11,000. That's the cost of therapy. That's the cost of me keeping my mouth shut. 11,000. My bank account barely had $700 in it, savings I'd been building for a car. "I don't have that," I said quickly. "I'm just a student. Please. Then figure it out." He snapped. "Call your parents. Borrow. Sell your computer. Your phone. I don't care. You have 2 hours. If I don't hear from you, I'm walking into the police station." The call ended. I sat there frozen, staring at the dead phone screen. The next 2 hours were a blur. I called my parents, shaking, voice cracking, as I tried to explain. At first, they thought I was lying or that I'd done something horrible. My dad, especially, his voice exploded through the phone. "What the hell were you thinking, sending nudes? Jesus Christ, are you insane?" "I didn't know," I kept saying. "She told me she was 19. Dad, please, I didn't know." My mom got on the line, softer but no less terrified. "Honey, are you sure this is real? It could be a scam. People fake things like this all the time." "It didn't feel fake," I muttered. My body was trembling so hard I could barely hold the phone. He knew my name. He knew my school. He sounded serious. My dad cursed under his breath. Then, reluctantly, "How much money do you have?" "I have 700, I admitted. "All right, I'll cover the rest," he said. His voice was still full of anger, but underneath, I heard something else. Fear. Not for himself, for me. I wired the money. My parents wired the rest. Then we waited. For the next several hours, I sat in my dorm staring at the door, waiting for the sound of cops. My phone buzzed once. A text. From Allison's number. Unknown. We got the money. Good choice. Enjoy your life. Don't ever contact this number again. Then silence. The next day, the number was disconnected. For weeks after, I lived in paranoia. Every knock at the door made my chest seize. Every time I saw a campus security car, I thought it was for me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My grades started slipping. My parents kept telling me it was a scam. Think about it, my mom said. Real cops don't give you a chance to pay them off. They just show up. That guy was preying on your fear. It was blackmail. Plain and simple. My dad was less forgiving. This better be the last time you ever pull something this stupid. You got lucky, but if it wasn't a scam, you'd be finished. No second chances. You hear me? I heard him. I still don't know the truth. Part of me believes my parents that it was just an elaborate ploy to extort young guys like me. The fake profile, the sudden escalation, the demand for money, it all fits. But part of me can't stop wondering. What if Allison wasn't fake? What if there really was a father on the other end of that phone? What if I did accidentally cross that line without knowing? That's the part that keeps me up some nights, the uncertainty. The not knowing. All I know is this. I never touched a dating app again. And if anyone ever asks me about online dating, I tell them the truth. Be careful. Because one mistake, even one you didn't mean to make, can destroy your life in a heartbeat. I never thought I'd be the type of person to meet someone off an app, but then again, I never thought I'd be single at 32 either. Life has a way of humbling you. Just 6 months earlier, I'd been living with my girlfriend of 4 years, Julia. We had a decent apartment in a quieter part of Cleveland, not far from Lake Erie. I thought we were building toward marriage, maybe even kids someday. But I guess when you live together long enough, the cracks get harder to ignore. For Julia, my long work hours in IT were the issue. For me, it was the way she started pulling away, staying late at the office herself, coming home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. When she finally admitted she'd been seeing her co-worker friend, I packed my bags and moved into a one-bedroom rental on the other side of town. I wasn't heartbroken in the Hollywood sense, no sobbing into ice cream tubs or blasting sad music, but there was this gnawing emptiness. Nights especially felt unbearable. That's how I ended up downloading Tinder. At first I told myself it was just for distraction. Swipe left, swipe right, chat a little, maybe grab a drink if the vibe felt okay. I didn't have the energy for anything serious. Mostly I matched with women who wanted the same. Casual dates, a way to feel wanted for a night or two. But then, about 4 months ago, I matched with someone who seemed different. Her name was Elena. Elena's profile stopped me mid-scroll, not because she was stunning in the conventional Instagram model way, but because of her photos. They weren't mirror selfies or vacation shots. They looked intentional, artistic even. One was of her laughing at some street fair. Another was her silhouetted against the lake at dusk. The last one was black and white, her sitting in a cafe with a notebook in front of her, chin resting on her hand, gazing out the window like she was lost in thought. Her bio was simple. Writer, coffee addict, lover of black and white photography, always chasing stories. That line, chasing stories, hooked me. We matched on a Tuesday night. Me. So, who takes your pictures? You have a good eye, Elena. Guilty. Self-timer and stubborn patience. Photography's my therapy. Me. I wouldn't have guessed self-timer. They look like magazine shots, Elena. That's the goal. From there, the conversation flowed easily. Unlike most matches, she didn't use short answers or emojis as stand-ins. She asked questions. She teased. She told me about her favorite authors and asked about my worst client horror story in IT. I remember smiling at my phone like an idiot, something I hadn't done in months. By Thursday, she invited me to dinner at her apartment. At first, I hesitated. Meeting someone in their home on the first date felt risky. But then she said she wanted to show me some of her unpublished work, photos she never posted online. I don't let just anyone see them, she typed. But you seem like someone who'd understand. Flattered and curious, I agreed. It was a cold Saturday evening when I drove across town. Elena lived in an older brick apartment complex near Lakewood, the kind with narrow hallways and faint smells of other people's cooking lingering in the air. I remember double-checking the address she texted me because the building looked so ordinary, almost forgettable. She buzzed me in, and when I reached her floor, the door was already cracked open. Elena stood there smiling. She was shorter than I expected, with shoulder-length dark hair tucked behind her ears and a long cardigan hanging loosely around her. "You made it," she said warmly. Her voice had this soothing quality, soft but confident. "Of course," I replied. "Couldn't pass up the chance for a home-cooked meal." She laughed lightly. "Let's hope it's edible." The first thing I noticed inside her apartment was how clean it was. Minimalist, almost to the point of sterility. White walls, black furniture, a couple of plants by the window. But what dominated the space were the photos. Black frames lined the walls, each containing black and white portraits. They weren't like the staged selfies from her profile. These were raw, intimate, almost too intimate. One showed a man smoking alone on a porch, shadows cutting across his face. Another was of a woman brushing her teeth, captured mid-motion, foam around her lips. A kid sleeping on a sofa, blanket half fallen to the floor. I paused in front of one, an older woman at her vanity, half-dressed, caught mid-expression like she'd just heard something behind her. "Wow," I said, trying to sound casual. "Your models do know how to pose, huh? Looks so natural." Elena smiled faintly, tilting her head. "They're not models." I chuckled, expecting her to explain. She didn't. "Wait, seriously? How do you capture moments like this then?" "Through windows," she said simply. "Secretly. People are their most honest when they don't know they're being watched." Her tone was calm, matter-of-fact, as if she were explaining a recipe. I froze for a second, trying to process whether she was joking, but the way her eyes lingered on mine, steady and proud, told me she wasn't. I forced a small laugh. "That's risky." "It's worth it," she replied. "Real emotion can't be posed. Fear, trust, loneliness. It only exists when someone thinks they're alone." Something cold slithered up my spine. Still, I sat at her small dining table as she poured wine and served pasta. She chatted easily, asking about my family, my favorite movies, the worst part of my job. I answered, but my appetite was gone. The portraits seemed to watch me from every wall, and every now and then, she'd glance not at me, but past me, like she was checking the lighting. "Has anyone ever caught you?" I asked, trying to sound lighthearted. "Once," she said, sipping her wine. She was furious. But I apologized and made it up to her. I didn't ask how. My gut screamed at me to leave. I thanked her for dinner, claiming I had an early morning. But as I stood, Elena quickly moved in front of the door. "Wait," she said softly. "Before you go, I want to show you my masterpiece." My stomach dropped. She led me down a narrow hallway, a fork I'd palmed from the table hidden in my sleeve. At the end of the hall was a locked door. She pulled out a key. Even before it opened, a rancid stench seeped through, thick and chemical. Inside was a dimly lit room. A single chair sat in the center. On it was a woman. At first I thought she was alive, sitting stiffly, dressed in a red swimsuit, eyes wide open. But her skin was gray, swollen, veins marbling her limbs. Her jaw twitched, and for a moment I thought she was about to speak. Then her mouth opened, and a stream of maggots spilled onto the floor. I dropped the fork. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" Elena whispered behind me. Her voice trembled with pride. I watched her for weeks before I took her. Look at that expression. Fear and trust, captured forever. I gagged. My brain screamed that this was a sick art piece, fake. But the stench, the buzzing of flies, the faint drip of fluids on the floor. All of it was real. Suddenly, the woman's skin sloughed off part of her face, peeling downward like wet paper. I screamed. Elena grabbed my arm. "Don't be scared. I can fix her. I'll glue it up. You understand me, don't you?" I ripped free and bolted. I don't remember running down the hallway or bursting into the street, but I remember the headlights of a passing car and the couple inside pulling over as I screamed for help. The police came minutes later. They stormed the apartment. But by then, Elena was gone. The woman's body was still there. The photos covered the walls. My half-eaten plate of pasta still sat on the table. Neighbors said Elena had only lived there a few months. Paid cash. No one knew her well. No trace of her real identity. They searched for weeks. Nothing. A month later, I received a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was me, sitting at a cafe with a coworker, taken through the window. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get sucked into the world of dating apps. But after the year I'd had, it almost felt inevitable. I was 25. Recently moved back to my hometown of Maplewood, Illinois. After breaking off a long-term relationship with my college boyfriend, Caleb, we'd been together for nearly 4 years, and for most of that time, I convinced myself that the jealousy, the controlling comments, and the silent treatments were just his ways of showing love. But deep down, I knew it was toxic. The final straw was one night when I came home late from work, and he accused me of cheating simply because my phone had died and he couldn't track me. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor with tears in my eyes, realizing that love wasn't supposed to feel like suffocation. Breaking up with him was brutal, but I managed. The harder part came after, the loneliness. My friends had all scattered, some were married, some living out of state, and others busy chasing careers. I had just finished my degree in communications, and though I had landed a decent marketing job downtown, the adjustment back into single life felt heavy. The nights were the worst. I'd curl up in bed, scrolling endlessly through my phone, wondering if I'd ever find someone who actually understood me. That's when I downloaded the apps. At first it was curiosity, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. Then it became routine. Swipe left, swipe right, short chats that fizzled out, the occasional late night, "You up?" that made me roll my eyes. Still, there was this gnawing need for connection that kept me coming back. That's how I matched with Ryan Matthews. His profile was simple. A couple of clean-cut photos, him hiking in the Smoky Mountains, him at a rooftop bar with friends, and one where he was holding a golden retriever puppy. His bio read, 27, mechanical engineer, love hiking, cooking, and live music, looking for something real. It wasn't flashy, but it felt grounded. And after so many profiles filled with shirtless mirror selfies or cryptic one-liners, Ryan's came across as refreshingly normal. I swiped right, he matched instantly. Our first conversation went like this. "Ryan, so, Ashley from Maplewood, you strike me as a brownies over cookies kind of person. Am I wrong?" "Me? Wow, bold assumption. But you're actually right, brownies all the way." "Ryan, knew it. Only true geniuses pick brownies." "Me. And what makes you the brownie authority?" "Ryan, I make a mean triple chocolate brownie. Family secret recipe. Maybe I'll prove it someday." I remember laughing to myself. The kind of laugh you let out when you actually feel sparks. He wasn't overly forward. He wasn't crude. Just easy to talk to. We chatted for almost a week straight. Mornings before work. Random updates during the day. Goodnight texts that actually made me smile. He told me about his job working on automotive parts, about his weekend hikes, about his dog. The golden retriever's name was Milo. I told him about my job, my obsession with trying new coffee shops, and how my guilty pleasure was true crime podcasts. It felt natural. So, when he suggested we meet, I said yes. But here's where things start to shift. Ryan asked if he could come by my place. At first I hesitated. I'd never invited a stranger from the internet over before. But he reassured me with lines like, "I get it. I totally respect boundaries. but if it helps, I can bring coffee or dinner. Low key, no pressure. I thought about it. My parents were out of town for the weekend. The house was quiet, and part of me was tired of waiting for the perfect date. I figured if he turned out to be weird, I could always kick him out. So I said yes. That Saturday, I woke up nervous but excited. I cleaned the house top to bottom, put on a light sweater and jeans, and even decided to bake a tray of brownies. It felt like a funny inside joke between us. Around 2:45, I checked my phone. Ryan, leaving now, be there in 15. At exactly 3, I heard a knock. My heart jumped. I smoothed my sweater, took a breath, and opened the door. But the man standing there was not Ryan. He was older, maybe mid-30s. His clothes were worn, like he'd just come from a construction site. His hair was greasy, his face unshaven. He looked heavier, tired, and most importantly, he looked nothing like the man from the photos. Hi, he said, forcing a crooked smile. Ashley? I froze. My stomach dropped. Who are you? I asked carefully. Ryan, he said quickly. Then after a pause he added, well, my nephew helped me with the profile. Those are his pictures. I figured if I used mine, no one would swipe right. He chuckled awkwardly, as if that explanation should have put me at ease. Every instinct in me screamed to slam the door, but instead, I found myself mumbling, oh, I see. I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to escalate things. So, stupidly, I let him in. We sat on the couch. I kept my body angled away from him, trying to create as much distance as possible. I offered him a brownie, but he just stared at me, eyes unblinking, like he was studying every part of me. The TV played in the background, but my mind was racing. At one point, I excused myself to the kitchen just to breathe. I texted my best friend Lena. Hey, guy came over. Doesn't look like his pics. Kinda sketch. We'll call you soon. When I came back, he was leaning forward on the couch, his hands clasped, eyes fixed on me. You're even prettier in person, he said softly. Thanks, I muttered, forcing a smile. Silence. His stare never broke. I couldn't take it anymore. Listen. My parents are actually coming home soon, so you should probably head out. For a moment he just sat there, unmoving. Then slowly, he stood. Sure, he said. I get it. Relief washed over me. He walked toward the door. I followed, ready to shut it behind him. But then, just as he stepped outside, he turned back, pulling something from his pocket. A small folding knife glinted in his hand. You know, he said almost casually, I could have killed you today. My breath caught. My body went numb. Then he smiled. Smiled. Kidding, he added with a chuckle that felt like nails on a chalkboard. And then he walked to his old pickup truck, climbed in, and drove away. I stood frozen at the door long after he was gone, my hands shaking so hard I couldn't even lock the door at first. That night, I deleted every app. I blocked his number. I sat in the silence of my empty house, realizing just how close I might have been to something unspeakable. Now, months later, I still replay his words in my head, the way he looked at me, the way he said it. I could have killed you today. And I know, deep down, that he wasn't really joking. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to sign up for a dating app. For most of my life, I'd always been painfully awkward around people. Especially when it came to dating. I wasn't the type to approach strangers in coffee shops or strike up conversations at bars. Honestly, I didn't even go to bars much. After my last relationship ended a little over a year ago, I sort of retreated into myself long nights of Netflix, working overtime at my job, playing video games, and convincing myself I didn't really need anyone. But loneliness has a strange way of creeping in when you least expect it. My best friend Tasha had been pushing me for months. Liv, come on, she said one night while we were sitting on her couch, half-eaten pizza between us. You can't just sit in your apartment forever. Try something new. Everyone's on dating apps now. I groaned. You know me. I'm terrible at small talk. I freeze up. I'll look like a total idiot. You'll be fine, she said, grinning. Besides, it's not like you're meeting them in person right away. You just text. You're great at texting. I rolled my eyes, but I knew she was right. Texting was safer. I could be witty and charming when I had time to think about what I was saying. Real life? Different story. That night, against my better judgment, I downloaded OkCupid. I told myself it was just for fun, just to see who was out there. At worst, I'd waste a few hours. At best, maybe I'd find someone decent to talk to. After a week of half-hearted swiping, I matched with a guy named Ethan Rivers. His profile stood out not because he was flashy, but because he wasn't. He described himself as a freelance graphic designer who loved cooking, horror movies, and hiking. His photos were normal too. One of him at a farmer's market. One of him sketching in a notebook. Another where he was awkwardly smiling next to his dog. A scruffy mutt named Scout. Our conversations flowed surprisingly well. He wasn't pushy like some of the other guys. He cracked self-deprecating jokes about being short 5'7", so don't wear heels unless you want to dunk on me. And he actually seemed interested in my responses, instead of just waiting to talk about himself. Over 2 weeks, we texted constantly memes, movie recommendations, random stories from our day. One Friday night, he asked if I wanted to meet in person. I know this is cliché, he texted, but I make a mean pasta. Come over and I'll cook for you. Then we can watch some indie horror movies. Promise it won't be boring. My first instinct was to say no. Every dating article screamed, meet in public. First rule. But I hesitated. He seemed genuine, and I'm 6'2". I towered over him in every sense. I knew I could handle myself if something felt off. Still, I texted Tasha about it. Girl, you are not going to some dude's apartment for your first date, she replied instantly. I know, I typed back. But he seems different. He cooks, remember? And I'm not exactly fragile. Different is what every girl says before she ends up on Dateline. We went back and forth until I finally promised her we'd have a system. I gave her his address, his full name, and we agreed on a code word. If I texted pineapple, she'd call me with some emergency excuse to leave. The night of the date, I stood outside Ethan's apartment building in Portland with my stomach in knots. The place was small but tidy looking, brick exterior with ivy crawling up the side. I texted Tasha. Here. We'll update if things get weird. Don't die, she replied, followed by a knife emoji. I laughed under my breath and knocked. Ethan opened the door almost immediately, smiling wide. Liv. Hey. Wow, you're taller than I imagined. Guess I didn't lie on my profile, I said, trying to joke. He stepped aside and ushered me in. His apartment smelled faintly of incense and something musky, like old books. There were canvases stacked in the corner, sketch pads scattered across a coffee table. At first glance, it was kind of charming, artsily, messy, not dirty. Want the tour? He asked. Sure. He led me around. Tiny living room, a cramped kitchen, and his bedroom where he lingered a little too long. This is the bed I told you about, he said with a grin. Queen size. Plenty of room for tall people. I forced a laugh. Good to know. We moved on quickly, and I expected him to start cooking. Instead, he pulled out a bottle of wine from the counter. Ta-da, he said, presenting it like a magician. Red. Imported. Cost me $100. You're gonna love it. Oh, nice, I said, though internally I frowned. So, what's for dinner? He hesitated, then shrugged. Didn't really get around to buying groceries. Figured wine would be enough for the vibe, you know? I laughed nervously. You said pasta. Yeah, but wine is more romantic, right? My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten all day, assuming he'd cook. He must have noticed my expression because he quickly added, I've got chips and bread. We can snack. It wasn't ideal, but I tried to let it slide. We poured wine, ate stale chips, and made small talk. But I couldn't ignore the way he kept topping off my glass every time I took a sip. Whoa, slow down, I said after the third refill. Come on, loosen up, he replied, grinning. This is the good stuff. Don't waste it. I forced a smile, but unease was starting to settle in. After we drained the bottle, he dimmed the lights and set up the movie. I asked what he'd picked, expecting some hidden gem. Instead, he pulled out a DVD copy of a Serbian film. My stomach dropped. Seriously? I asked. That movie's not really my thing. That's because you don't get it, he said smugly. It's not just shock value. It's art. Social commentary. You'll see. I've seen it, I said firmly, not really interested in watching again. He waved a dismissive hand. You didn't really see it. You probably just looked away. Watch it with me, I'll explain it. Against my better judgment, I stayed. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe I didn't want to make a scene. But I sat on his couch while he pressed play. As the film went on, I tried to distract myself by texting Tasha casually. But Ethan noticed. Who are you texting? He asked sharply. My friend, I said, keeping my tone light. Just letting her know I'll be late. He relaxed a little, leaning back. Good. Don't want any distractions. Half an hour in, the movie hit one of its most disturbing scenes. Ethan went quiet. Too quiet. The only sound was his heavy breathing through his nose. I risked a glance. He was staring at the screen, eyes wide, lips parted. You good? I asked carefully. He gave a low groan. Then, without warning, he scooted closer until our hips touched. His hand landed on my thigh. Why not? He whispered when I pushed him back. My skin crawled. I should go, I said quickly, standing up. Wait, he snapped, eyes flashing irritation. But I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. My heart was pounding as I stepped into the dark hallway. Behind me, from inside the apartment, came a sudden screech, high-pitched, animalistic. I froze. For a second, I thought he'd locked the door, that he was coming for me. My hands shook as I fumbled with the knob, finally wrenching it open. I bolted down the stairs, half expecting him to appear with a knife. He didn't. But the sound of that screech followed me all the way onto the street. I called Tasha, voice shaking. Get here now, please. She pulled up 5 minutes later. The second I got into her car, I burst into tears. On the ride home, I told her everything, the fake cooking, the wine, the movie, the way he touched me during that scene. Tasha's face went pale. Liv, that's seriously messed up, she said. I'm so sorry I wasn't closer. It's not your fault, I whispered. But I don't think that guy's just awkward. There's something really wrong with him. The next day, I blocked his number, but it didn't feel like enough. After turning it over in my mind for days, I finally called the police. I explained everything not as a crime report, but as a warning. The officer on the phone was surprisingly understanding. You're right, none of this is technically illegal, he said. But we'll make a note of his name. If something else comes up in the future, we'll know where to start. That gave me a strange sense of relief. Like maybe I'd prevented something worse. I didn't date again for years, and when I finally did, I stuck to public places. No exceptions, because what I learned that night is this. It's not the obvious red flags you need to worry about. It's the ones you don't see coming until you're already sitting on the couch, in the dark, next to someone who isn't just quirky or awkward, someone who's dangerous. I never thought I'd be the type of person to download a dating app, but loneliness does strange things to you. Back in the late 1990 seconds, online dating wasn't really apps yet. It was websites, message boards, weird chat rooms where you hoped the stranger on the other end wasn't a 40-year-old man pretending to be someone else. But I was 19, fresh out of high school, and trying to figure out who the hell I was. A little backstory. I grew up in a small town outside of Dayton, Ohio. My parents had divorced when I was 12, and I'd spent most of my teenage years bouncing between my mom's house and my dad's one-bedroom apartment. I wasn't popular in school. I was that quiet girl in oversized sweaters who wrote poetry in the margins of her math homework and tried not to make eye contact in the hallways. So, when graduation came, most of my friends were heading to universities out of state, starting real lives, while I stayed behind, working nights at a grocery store and saving for community college. I wanted something different. Someone who saw me. That's when I stumbled across a website called True Match. It was clunky, the profiles looked like bad resumes, and the photos took forever to load on dial-up. Still, it was the first time I could filter people by interests, instead of by whoever happened to notice me in the frozen food aisle. That's how I met Aaron Pierce. He was older than me. At first he said 21, then 23, and later I'd find out the number kept sliding depending on who he was talking to. His photo showed him leaning against a car, wearing a leather jacket with this lazy grin that, back then, made my stomach flip. His messages were confident, almost too confident, but I was so desperate for attention that I let it slide. The first time we met in person, I was 15. He picked me up at a gas station near my mom's house because I didn't want her to see. Looking back, that should have been the first red flag. A grown man insisting on secrecy. But at the time, I convinced myself it was romantic, like some forbidden love story. We became this weird on and off summer fling. He'd disappear for months, then show up with an apology and a smile that made me forget why I was mad in the first place. Nothing serious until my senior year. It was December. Snow piled high against the curbs, and I was walking home from my after-school job when his car pulled up alongside me. "Hop in, Maddie," he said, rolling down the window. His voice always had this smoothness to it, like honey poured over glass. That night, parked under a flickering streetlight, he asked me to be his girlfriend. I said yes. I wish I could go back and shake that girl, tell her to run. By the time I turned 18, Aaron had convinced me to move in with him. "It'll be easier," he'd said. "We'll build a life together." I thought it meant partnership, someone to share bills with, laugh with, grow with. But what it really meant was me working 2 jobs, stocking shelves during the day and waiting tables at night while he quit every job he landed after a week, claiming bosses were out to get him. The first fight came over something stupid. I'd worn a dress to school once, and he accused me of flaunting myself for other guys. He grabbed my wrist so hard it left a bruise, then cried afterward saying, "I just love you too much. I can't stand the thought of losing you." I forgave him, over and over, until forgiveness became survival. When our son Eli was born, I thought maybe things would change. Aaron cried when he first held him, kissed my forehead, and swore he'd be better. For a while, he was. He'd get up for late-night feedings, sing lullabies off-key, tell me we were a real family now. But the sweetness never lasted. The abuse crept back in, first the insults, then the slaps, then the choking, hands around my throat when I said something he didn't like. He'd always apologize afterward, whispering, "You know I'd never really hurt you, Maddie. You just make me so mad sometimes." Except he did hurt me, over and over, and every time, a little piece of me went numb. It was February, icy wind rattling the windows, when Aaron came home late with a friend. I'll call him Tyler. I was sitting on the floor with Eli, building block towers and watching him giggle as he knocked them down. When Aaron walked in, he smelled like beer, his voice too loud, too cheerful. "Hey babe," he said, dropping his coat on the floor. "Look who I brought." Tyler gave me a half smile. Nervous, like he already knew what kind of man Aaron really was. At first, everything seemed fine. They cracked open beers, laughed about some inside joke, and I stayed quiet, keeping Eli close. But then Aaron's tone shifted too sweet, dripping with sarcasm. "So, Maddie," he said, leaning against the counter, "you like having the house to yourself, huh? Bet you don't miss me at all." I froze. That fake sweetness always came before a storm. "I didn't say that," I whispered. Tyler cleared his throat. "Man, chill out. She didn't mean anything." Aaron ignored him. He stepped closer, his smile stretching thin. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see the way guys look at you?" My heart started racing. I tried to de-escalate. "Aaron, please. Not tonight. The baby." "Shut up," he snapped. Then, in a voice that made my stomach drop, "I'll beat you like a man." I clutched Eli tighter. "Please don't, just please." Aaron's eyes flicked to Tyler. "Take the kid," he ordered. I hesitated, but I knew Eli was safer in Tyler's arms than mine. My hands shook as I passed my baby to him. "Please," I whispered to Tyler. "Just keep him safe." The second Eli was out of my arms, Aaron lunged. He grabbed my hair, yanking me to the ground, fists slamming into my face. I tasted blood immediately. I scrambled toward the phone on the side table, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. I got as far as 9-1, before Aaron ripped the receiver from my hand and smashed it across my cheek. "You call the cops on me?" he roared. "I'll kill you, Maddie. Do you hear me? I'll kill you and not think twice." His hands wrapped around my throat. My vision blurred. Stars exploded behind my eyes. Somewhere in the haze, I saw Tyler frozen, clutching Eli, terror written all over his face. "Go," I croaked. "Get help." But Aaron barked. "You move, I kill you both." I stopped fighting. For a second, I thought, this is it. He's really going to do it. Then, pounding. Loud. Insistent. "Police." Aaron froze, chest heaving. He hissed, "Don't you say a word," and opened the door. "Evening, sir," one officer said. "We got a hang-up call from this number. Everything all right?" Yeah, Aaron said smoothly. Baby was just crying. My girl overreacted. I stumbled into view, blood streaming from my split lip, bruises already forming. The officer's eyes widened. "Ma'am, are you okay?" That was all it took. The cops pushed past him, pinning Aaron against the wall while another officer helped me sit down. "You're safe now," he murmured. But I didn't feel safe. Not yet. At the hospital, one officer told me quietly, "I've seen a lot of injuries in this job. Yours. It's a miracle you're alive." Aaron was arrested. From jail, he called me, his voice calm, almost casual. "Why'd you do this to me, Maddie?" Not an apology. Not even anger. Just disbelief that I'd finally stopped protecting him. He was sentenced to 26 days in jail. 26. That was it. But before he could serve them, he skipped town. For months, he stalked me, calling from blocked numbers, showing up outside places I worked. I lived in constant fear. Eventually, he moved on. To another woman. I tried to warn her. I tried. But she didn't listen. And one night, she didn't survive. He strangled her in her apartment, just like he'd promised he'd do to me. Aaron Pierce is in prison now. Life sentence. No chance of parole. And even though I know he can't touch me anymore, I still wake up some nights gasping, my throat burning with the memory of his hands. I live with guilt. Guilt that I survived. And she didn't. Guilt that my silence in those early years might have allowed him to keep hurting women. But I also live with relief. Relief that my son never saw me die on that living room floor. Relief that, for once, the police arrived in time. Relief that I am still here to tell this story. Because if I hadn't left him when I did, I know without a doubt it would have been me. I never thought I'd actually download Tinder. It always seemed like one of those apps people my age joked about but never really took seriously. I grew up in a small city called Riverton, where everyone knows everyone's business. You can't go to the grocery store without bumping into someone you've known since kindergarten. That's partly why I was excited to leave for college finally. A chance to just breathe without every move being observed. I'm 19 now. A freshman at Ashwood University, a mid-sized campus tucked into the hills about an hour from my hometown. So far, college life has been what you'd expect. Late-night study sessions, cheap instant ramen, and endless conversations with my roommates about everything from makeup tutorials to who's secretly hooking up with who. For context, I've always been the attention magnet type, even when I didn't want to be. In high school, I was the girl guys tried to ask out just to brag, and the girl other girls sometimes disliked without even knowing me. I don't mean that arrogantly, it's just how things played out. My mom always told me, "You need to be careful, Ava. People will want things from you just because of how you look." I didn't really take her warning seriously. It all started one night in our dorm. My roommates, Hannah and Jess, were lounging on the futon, scrolling through their phones while I sat at my desk trying to finish an essay. Hannah suddenly blurted, "Ava, you would kill it on Tinder." I laughed without looking up. "Please, that's literally the last thing I need." "No, I'm serious." Jess chimed in, tossing me her phone. "Look at these creeps messaging me. Half of them can't spell, and the other half think a dog filter selfie is attractive. If you made a profile, you'd probably get 100 matches in an hour." "Not interested," I muttered, still typing. But they didn't let up. The teasing went on for half an hour until Hannah finally downloaded the app on my phone herself. She picked some photos from my Instagram, one where I was in a sundress, one with a smoky makeup look I'd done, and one with me laughing at a coffee shop. Within minutes of going live, my phone started buzzing like crazy. "See?" Jess grinned. "Told you. You're the hot one." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help laughing as the notifications kept coming. Some messages were typical. "Hey, gorgeous. Eyes, though. Wid tonight." Others were just gross. I ignored most of them. But it became a kind of game, swiping through profiles with my roommates, joking about which guy looked like he lived in his mom's basement, and which one probably had a secret family. It was harmless fun. Or at least, I thought it was. 2 nights later, I got a message from a profile with the username @BleedingMuse. It didn't have a profile picture. Just a black and white sketch of a rose dripping what looked like ink. His bio was blank, except for a single line. The first message read, "I saw you. You're brighter than the moon and darker than sin." I actually laughed out loud when I read it. "What is this? A Hot Topic poem from 2007? I muttered. Hannah leaned over. "Oh my God, Ava. That's so cringe. Block him." But something about it made me curious. I typed back, "Smooth. You write that in every girl's DMs?" His reply came instantly. "No, only you. That should have been my red flag." Instant replies, too intense. But instead, I showed it to Jess and we joked about how desperate he sounded. I didn't block him. Over the next few days, he sent me long messages, full paragraphs of poetry, dramatic metaphors, and even sketches he claimed to draw himself. One was of a girl with long hair standing under a streetlight. The caption read, "She doesn't see me, but I see her." "Creepy," I said, tossing my phone onto the futon. "Tell him to chill," Hannah said, but it became a weird sort of entertainment. I'd read his over-the-top messages out loud in this exaggerated voice, and my roommates would burst into laughter. We thought it was harmless, just some angsty guy trying to impress strangers online. Until the drawings got darker. One night, he sent me a photo of words written on crumpled paper. My name was scrawled across it again and again, smeared with something reddish-brown. "Looks like fake blood," I muttered, uneasy. Jess frowned. "Ava, that's not funny anymore. You need to unmatch him." I did. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next evening, my WhatsApp buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was him. Same username, same style, same creepy poetry. "Do you know how crazy I am for you?" I'd bleed just to prove it. I froze. How did he get my number? Hannah looked pale. "Ava, delete that. Now." But instead of deleting, I got reckless. Maybe it was my way of taking control. Maybe it was stupidity. I typed back, "I bet you aren't man enough to actually show your face, loser." I hit send before I could second guess it. 5 minutes later, my doorbell rang. It was 12:34 a.m. I wasn't even supposed to be at the dorm that night. I'd gone home for the holidays because campus emptied out. My mom was on a work trip, so I was alone in our house. When the chime echoed through the empty halls, my heart dropped into my stomach. I crept downstairs barefoot, trying not to make a sound. My hand shook as I leaned toward the peephole. No one was there. I exhaled shakily, telling myself it was just coincidence, maybe a package delivery. I opened the door a crack. There was nothing, no person, no car, just silence. Then I looked down. A red envelope lay on the doormat. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It smelled metallic, sharp, almost sour. Inside was a single piece of paper. The words were jagged, written in what looked disturbingly like blood. "Did you miss me?" I slammed the door shut and locked it, my breath ragged. My hands shook as I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I think someone's stalking me, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. He was outside my house. He left me something. The dispatcher's voice was calm. "Stay on the line with me, ma'am. Can you move to a safe part of the house?" I backed away from the door, flicking off every light, hoping whoever was outside would think I wasn't home. My chest tightened. My ears strained for every sound. And then I made a mistake. I peeked through the backyard window. There he was. A man stood shirtless in the middle of the yard, still as stone. His eyes were locked on my window. My knees nearly buckled. I grabbed a flashlight and flicked it toward him. The beam hit his chest first, and that's when I saw it, my name carved into his skin. Via. Fresh blood oozed from the letters, dripping down his torso. My breath caught in my throat. I moved the light up to his face, and my world shattered. It wasn't a stranger. It was Mark, my childhood best friend's stepdad, the same man who used to drive us to soccer practice, who once lingered too long when giving me a hug, who once commented on one of my Instagram photos. "Beautiful, just like your mom." He grinned, wide and twisted, like a child showing off a drawing. I dropped the flashlight, screaming. I bolted to my room and locked the door, crouching in the corner as the dispatcher's voice came through my phone. "Ma'am, stay calm. Officers are on the way. Don't open the door for anyone but the police." I sobbed, shaking, waiting what felt like hours. The sirens finally came, but when the police searched the yard, he was gone. All they found were bloody footprints leading into the woods. I gave them everything: the Tinder profile, the WhatsApp messages, the letter. They investigated, but nothing linked directly to Mark. The profile was deleted. The number untraceable. When they tried to question him, they discovered he'd quit his job and left his family months earlier. My childhood best friend won't even look at me now. Her mom claims she knew nothing. Weeks have passed. I can't sleep without double-checking every lock. A few nights ago, I heard scratching at my window. When I peeked out, I swear I saw a shadow move away. The next morning, there was a single white rose on my porch. Its petals were soaked in blood. Tied to it was a note: "The blood may fade, but I never will. This weekend I'm filing for a restraining order." My mom begged the police to keep a lookout for him, to arrest him the moment he resurfaces. But I know he's out there, watching, waiting, and every night, I wonder if the next knock at my door will be the last sound I ever hear.